Hello, my name is Amber Hardy, and today I want to talk to you or share with you my research topic. My research topic speaks to gentrification, residential inequality, and education inequality. My goal is to seek out the correlation between the three to see how residential inequality, gentrification, and education inequality impacts students' post-secondary educational outcomes. My topic is very relevant today because we live in a society where we are seeking to find or implement ways to provide inclusion for all students, especially our disadvantaged population students who are mostly African American or students of color. Residential inequality is also a very relevant topic because we live in a time where affordable housing is very limited. We lack a lot of funding and resources to assist those disadvantaged families to be able to afford affordable housing even in the urban areas, in addition to the rural areas. So residential inequality is a very vital topic. We're also living in a time where we are sorting through and navigating through gentrification, which also plays a huge part when it comes to residential inequality through segregation. And we know that we have had a history of residential inequality as it relates to segregation. Many years ago, dealing with redlining, we know now that segregation is illegal. However, we are still impacted, or we're still feeling the impact from those policies many years ago that actually stood together to form the whole redlining policies that kept African American or disadvantaged students or population of peoples out of certain neighborhoods. Residential inequality is very important because when you look at residential inequality, you're looking at the social economic status of students, and we're looking at how education inequality is impacted from the residential inequality because those students lack funding, they lack resources, they lack the support that students that are not on the lower socioeconomic status rating scale, they don't have those resources. And so I basically want to just kind of hone in on the relationship. How does residential inequality impact, or gentrification or education inequality? How does those things impact post-secondary education for disadvantaged students? And we do understand we're living in a society where your neighborhood, your residence, it matters to students' outcomes, because students that are disadvantaged and live in residential areas that do not offer extracurricular activities such as tutoring after class, that do not offer resources such as computers. Maybe they have them in the school, but they don't have them in the home. How those students are impacted. Even students who live in those lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, how their schools are impacted from residential inequality. Residential inequality does not just impact disadvantaged students, it also impacts institutions. So the school institutions in which the students belong to, schools are impacted by residential inequality. A lot of the funding for schools are implemented off of a tax scale. So the lower the tax, the lower the funding. The higher the tax bracket, the higher the funding. A lot of families perceive that it is very imperative for them to live in those higher social economic residential neighborhoods so that their children can be afforded a more quality education. And my goal is to determine in my research topic, are the students who are actually in those higher socioeconomic residential neighborhoods that participate in those higher score standard schools where their outcomes are much more higher and greater than the lower socioeconomic students whose academic and achievements through standardized testings are really, really low. I want to dig into the research to see where do we need to start advocating, implementing. I also want to look at policies, what policies have institutions like Metro Public Schools as well as university and colleges put in place to reduce the barriers or the gaps that disadvantaged students face when it comes to residential inequality. I want to look at policies that have previously been created, also look at policies that are in the works for being created for students who are impacted from segregation, from residential inequality. So I feel like, or I believe my topic is very imperative, and it will bring an insight to residential inequality, education inequality, gentrification, and how those three correlate to impact students' post-secondary education. I feel like it is, or I believe the study is imperative because is very imperative because we're also dealing with a time where the Trump administration has decided to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion from the schools and the government, which also will create an even larger gap for equity when it comes to education for disadvantaged students. A lot of students that are disadvantaged will lose funding due to the removal of DEI. So this is a very pertinent time. This is a very pertinent time for me to be studying residential inequality, education inequality, gentrification, all those things that play a huge part in the impact of disadvantaged students, and how does the impact associate with the support or the lack of support for those students to be able to not only graduate from high school, but also be able to continue on to expand on post-secondary education. Residential inequality study is very important, not just for students to be able to obtain or achieve, and when you look at academic and performance, but also for their future endeavors. Students that are able to go on and continue and graduate through post-secondary educations are afforded more opportunities when it comes to the workforce and careers, and they're able to break the cycle of poverty, which is very much so impacted by people who face or have to deal with those lower socioeconomic statuses. So I just wanted to share my topic and share why my topic is very relevant and why I'm passionate about my topic. I hope you have enjoyed this vlog, this conversation, and until next time, see you later. Bye-bye.